There comes a moment in every life when the senses, so loud, so insistent, so deceiving, finally lose their power over you. It is the moment you dare to believe what your eyes cannot see, what your ears cannot hear, and what your hands cannot touch. It is the moment you awaken to the astonishing truth: your inner world is the only world, and everything outside is nothing but its echo. When you learn to fool your senses, you stop obeying the facts of life and begin commanding them. And when you do, life bends, yields, reshapes, and rearranges itself to reflect the unseen reality you have claimed within. The senses have ruled your entire life, and yet they have never once told you the truth of who you are or what is possible for you. They have shown you only the shadows on the wall, the faintest suggestion of a reality that bends itself to your inner state. And so the first great lesson is the most difficult, because it asks you to stand against the world that seems so loud, so solid, so undeniable. It asks you to trust something far quieter, something invisible, something that whispers rather than shouts: your imagination. To believe the unseen is to turn away from the tyranny of appearances and acknowledge that the true creative power is not out there, but within your own wonderful human imagination. This is where every event in your life is born, where every desire you've ever felt first appeared as an inner image before the senses had any evidence to offer. Yet you were trained to bow to the senses, to wait for permission, to look for confirmation from the world instead of accepting your inner experience as the only authority. You have been conditioned to believe that what you see is what is true, that what you touch, hear, and observe is the ultimate reality. But the senses show nothing more than the material echo of older assumptions, old beliefs made visible. They are always late, always behind, always showing the past. What you call now is simply yesterday's imagination, clothed in form. When you look at your circumstances and claim them as truths, you are worshiping the past. Every limitation, every lack, every disappointment that appears in your experience is just an outdated reflection of an identity you are no longer required to hold. But you have believed the mirror for so long that you forgot you were the one creating the face being reflected. The senses cannot tell you anything new. They cannot reveal what is possible. They can only display what you have already accepted within yourself. To follow them is to live in a loop, repeating the same patterns disguised as reality. And so you must learn to fool your senses, not in the way the world would understand, but in the truest, most powerful way. Fooling your senses means daring to feel something as true, even when every physical indicator tells you it is impossible. It means embodying the wish fulfilled when the world insists you still lack it. It means claiming the end while standing in the middle of what contradicts it. This is not delusion, this is creation, because imagination is not fantasy. Imagination is causation. When you assume a new state, when you feel deeply that which has not yet appeared, you are not pretending. You are selecting a new reality from the infinite possibilities already existing in consciousness. The world will eventually rearrange itself to reflect your new selection, but the senses, being anchored in the physical, cannot show it to you instantly. The seed must grow. The bridge of events must unfold. But you, standing at the beginning of it, must not betray your assumption by bowing once again to appearances. The moment you react to the senses, fearfully, doubtfully, impatiently, you return to the old state, and the world responds accordingly. To believe the unseen is to refuse this temptation, to remain loyal to the inner conviction even when nothing supports it. This loyalty is the mark of the true creator. This loyalty is the secret known by those who live lives others call impossible. You must understand that your senses are followers, never leaders. They reflect your inner conviction. They do not create it. If you wait for them to confirm what you want before you believe it, you have already surrendered your creative authority. You have handed power back to the mirror. You have forgotten the law. And yet there is a moment when you can take back everything, when you can reclaim your rightful dominion. It is the moment you decide to trust imagination over appearance, the moment you choose the unseen over the visible, the moment you cling to your inner vision with a faith stronger than your old habits. In that moment, The world, even though it may look unchanged, has already begun to alter. The shift is instant. The manifestation begins immediately, but the physical reflection takes time to appear, not because the desire is difficult, not because the world must be convinced, but because the senses operate on a slower wavelength than imagination. The unseen is lightning, the seen is its echo. There is a profound beauty in walking through a world that has not yet caught up to your inner transformation. It is like knowing the ending of a story while the pages are still turning. You watch the scenes unfold, not with anxiety or impatience, but with a quiet confidence, because you know the outcome cannot be denied. You have already lived the end in imagination. You have already accepted it. The bridge you walk may surprise you, delight you, challenge you, or unfold in ways you could never have predicted, but it will always lead to your assumption made flesh. And all of this becomes effortless the moment you stop asking your senses for approval and begin asking your inner state for direction. When you truly believe the unseen, you stop struggling in the physical world. You stop trying to force change. You stop pushing, pleading, or begging reality to shift. You understand that the only work is inner work. The only place where creation happens is within. And once the inner creation is complete, the outer world has no choice but to reflect it. The senses cannot resist the law any more than a mirror can resist the image before it. Reality is not independent. It is obedient. And what it obeys is not your effort, not your words, not your prayers, but your assumption. What you accept as true, what you feel as natural, is what the world must mirror. This is why the unseen is everything. Because the unseen is the cause. The seen is merely the effect. You may have wondered why certain desires linger, why some manifestations feel delayed, why your world sometimes contradicts the assumption you hold. It is not because the desire is wrong. It is not because the world is resisting you. It is because you continue to believe the senses more than your inner reality. You look too quickly. You check for signs. You glance at the physical world as though it has the authority to approve or deny your desires. But the physical world has no such power. It can only reflect, never create. When you peer out into the world and say, it's not here yet, you return to the sense-bound state. You step out of the end and back into the middle. You abandon the unseen and submit to the seen. And the world reflects that change immediately. To remain loyal to the unseen I, a discipline. It is the highest form of mastery, because it asks you to trust the invisible above the visible, the eternal above the temporary, the cause above the effect. But once you learn this discipline, once you master this loyalty, you become unstoppable. You walk with a power the world cannot comprehend. The second great keynote opens like a doorway the moment you accept the first. Once you believe the unseen, you must live from it as though it were already true. Living from the unseen is not an act of imagination alone. It is an identity shift. It is choosing to be the version of yourself who is already fulfilled, already complete, already living the reality you once only desired. And this shift does not require effort. It requires acceptance. You do not force yourself into the new state. You relax into it. You feel its naturalness. You allow yourself to inhabit it fully, even when everything around you contradicts it. This is the secret the world does not understand. Creation happens by ease, not force, by inner alignment, not outer struggle. Living from the unseen means everything in your world is filtered through the identity of the one who already has the desire. You no longer wake up wondering if your manifestation is coming. You wake up knowing it is already yours. You no longer ask whether life will cooperate. You know life is already orchestrating everything on your behalf. You no longer react to circumstances with fear because the version of you who has the desire would not fear. You no longer question timing because the fulfilled version of you does not wait. They live in the end. They breathe from the end. They speak from the end. They respond from the end. This identity becomes so natural, so familiar, so effortless that the outer world must bend to it. Not eventually, immediately, in the unseen, gradually in the seen. Think of the state of the wish fulfilled as a garment. You slip it on not because the world confirms it, but because you choose it. You wear it in your imagination. You feel its texture, its weight, its reality. And as you continue to wear it, the old state falls away like a discarded coat. You no longer identify with lack, fear, or doubt. You no longer act as the one who is waiting. You act as the one who has already received. And this act is not performance. It is truth. The senses may resist, but your imagination does not. Imagination embraces the new state instantly, and because imagination is the root, the world must eventually follow. Living from the unseen also means releasing the need to manage every detail of how your desire will unfold. You do not worry about the path, because the path will reveal itself. You do not question the sequence, because the sequence is already arranged. You do not concern yourself with the when or the how, because the one who already has the desire does not ask such questions. They simply live, they move, they breathe, they trust. And this trust is not blind, it is grounded in the experiential knowing that the unseen is the cause of all things. The moment you assume it, the moment you feel it, the moment you accept it, it is done. You begin to notice subtle changes in your responses. You become calmer, more confident, more stable. You walk with a quiet power, not because the world has changed yet, but because you have changed. And the world, being nothing more than a mirror, must reflect this new identity. You find that situations that once triggered fear now feel insignificant. Conversations that once filled you with doubt now pass through you without effect. Circumstances that once intimidated you now seem strangely irrelevant. Why? Because they no longer match your inner state. They no longer define you, the unseen version of yourself, the fulfilled versio. As now the true self you inhabit, and everything else is fading away. Living from the unseen also reveals something extraordinary. Once you assume the new state, once you feel it as natural, life moves with a grace you could never achieve through effort. People appear at the right time. Opportunities unfold without force. Ideas arise effortlessly. You find yourself guided, supported, carried by a power greater than your physical self. This is not coincidence. This is the law in motion. You are not manifesting through willpower. You are manifesting through alignment. The world is simply matching your inner acceptance. And the more deeply you settle into this identity, the faster and more smoothly the outer world conforms. There is a moment in this process that feels like a shift in gravity. You realize you are no longer trying to get anything. You are no longer reaching. You are no longer searching. You are no longer asking. You are simply being. And the irony is that the moment you stop chasing, everything begins to come toward you. The moment you stop trying, everything begins to unfold. The moment you stop doubting, everything begins to solidify. Because the outer world can only mirror the state you occupy. And the state of already having is the most powerful magnetic force in existence. When you believe the unseen, and when you live from it, you enter a new dimension of existence, a dimension where life becomes a creative partnership between you and the deeper self, a dimension where you no longer react to the world, but the world reacts to you, a dimension where manifestation is not a goal, but a byproduct of who you are being. And the more consistently you dwell in this awareness, the more quickly your world reshapes itself. This is the mastery so few achieve, because it asks you to trust what cannot yet be seen. But once you learn it, once you embody it, you live it, you will never again be the same. When you begin to understand that the senses are not the authority of your life, something extraordinary awakens within you. You start to notice how often you have allowed the world of appearances to hypnotize you, how frequently you surrendered your inner authority to the outer picture. Yet everything you have ever created, whether knowingly or unknowingly, began in the invisible chambers of imagination, long before it revealed itself as fact. The outer world is not the cause, it is only the echo, the shadow, the delayed reflection of what you once assumed to be true. And this is the turning point where your power returns to you. For you discover that what you are encountering today is nothing more than the hardened residue of thoughts once entertained with feeling. The moment you grasp this, life stops appearing chaotic and begins to feel obedient, responsive, almost predictable, because you are no longer at the mercy of what your senses report. There is a profound truth hidden beneath this. You are always experiencing your own assumptions, whether they were planted deliberately or allowed to grow unconsciously. If your senses tell you that nothing is changing, that you are stuck, that circumstances are fixed, recognize that these senses are merely showing you what you once believed, not what you are now free to believe. Do not argue with them. Do not resist them. Simply rise inwardly to a higher assumption, one that feels like a richer, fuller expression of the life you desire. The senses may scream that nothing is different, but their protest is meaningless. They are like actors playing a role written long ago. They can only perform the script you gave them. Change the script, and eventually, even stubbornly, reluctantly, the senses will adjust. They have no choice. In the silence of imagination, assume the state you desire as though it were already the most natural thing in the world. Feel it into being, not by forcing, not by straining, but by gently surrendering to the sensation of already having what you desire. The senses will not confirm it at first. They cannot. They only confirm what has already been accepted with feeling. But as you persist in this inner knowing, the outer world begins to rearrange itself. People shift, circumstances shift, opportunities appear where there were none. The invisible becomes visible, and the unseen becomes unavoidable reality. There is an art to ignoring your senses, not in denial, not in delusion, but in divine authority. You ignore them the way a master sculptor ignores the rough stone, seeing instead the finished figure within. When he taps the stone, he is not trying to create the statue. He is releasing the form he already sees. Your imagination works exactly the same way. You do not create from nothing. You reveal what you have accepted as already true in the unseen realm. To the world, this appears mysterious, miraculous, impossible. But once you understand the process, you realize it is the most natural law in existence. And so the senses may insist that the money is not there, that the relationship has not changed, that the opportunity has not appeared. But you must learn to fool them, kindly, confidently, intentionally. Treat them like a loyal but slow-moving servant. They obey, but they obey slowly. Imagination commands, senses follow. When you reverse this order, you become a prisoner of appearances. When you restore it, you become the author of your world. You do not wait for the senses to show proof before you believe first, and the proof arrives as a shadow of that belief. This is why the unseen is always the parent, and the seen is only the child. Every visible thing began as a thought felt with conviction. The world calls it coincidence, luck, practicality, but it is all imagination in motion. You are simply becoming conscious of what you have always been doing unconsciously. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are planting a seed in the soil of the deep mind. It may not sprout immediately, but it must sprout. No seed planted in imagination remains barren. Some seeds grow quickly, others take time. Not because imagination is slow, but because the senses cling to the old picture until your persistence dissolves their resistance. Persistence is not effort. It is simply remaining faithful to the unseen reality until it becomes seen. And once it does, you will look back and realize that every result was inevitable the moment you dared to assume its truth. As you continue this practice, you will notice something miraculous happening. Your dependence on the outer world begins to fade. You no longer look to circumstances for permission to believe. You stop asking the world, can I have this? Is it possible? Instead, you declare inwardly, it is already mine, and allow the world to catch up. This is the freedom most people never experience. They wait for evidence before believing, never realizing the waiting itself delays the evidence. But you are learning a new pattern, a new rhythm, a new relationship with reality. You are learning to lead, not follow, to command, not react, to create, not beg. And as this inner authority strengthens, You begin to notice how often the senses try to seduce you back into old assumptions. They remind you of past failures, past disappointments, past limitations. They whisper that things are not moving, that nothing is shifting, that your imagination is fantasy. But they are only showing you yesterday's beliefs. Reply to them with silence, with calm certainty, with the knowing that your inner world is the true cause. Continue feeling the wish fulfilled, and the senses will eventually kneel before your assumption. This is when you realize the second great truth. The unseen is more real than the seen. The outer world changes, the inner world creates. The senses fluctuate, the imagination remains steady. Trust the inner over the outer, and you begin to live from a higher dimension of experience. You become someone whom circumstances cannot intimidate. You become someone who can look at emptiness and feel abundance, look at loneliness and feel love, look at obstacles and feel accomplishment. And the moment you feel it, the outer world must bend to match it. The world will call it confidence, but it is far more than confidence. It is spiritual certainty. It is the knowing that creation is finished, that the moment you accept a desire as true, it exists in the unseen and must reveal itself in the seen. You are not creating your desire. You are selecting it, choosing it, claiming it. The senses may not understand how, but they will follow. In this way, imagination becomes your compass, your anchor, your guiding light. You no longer hesitate at the appearance of lack. You no longer shrink in the presence of delay. You no longer doubt when conditions look unchanged. You smile inwardly, knowing that the unseen is already working, already shaping, already aligning the outer world to your inner conviction. And when the manifestation arrives, and it always does, you will realize something extraordinary. It was never the manifestation that changed you. It was the assumption that changed you. The manifestation was merely the mirror. The transformation happened the moment you believed the unseen more deeply than you believed the senses. The moment you truly understand that your imagination is the primary reality, you begin to see the world not as it is, but as it reflects what you hold within. Every circumstance, every person, every event that appears outside of you is merely a reflection of your inner state. And here lies a profound lesson. The outer can never challenge the inner. It can only mirror it. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, when you dwell in that state as naturally as breathing, the outer must conform. It has no choice. This is the first great truth of the unseen. It is the law of all creation, the only law that governs change, the immutable reality behind all forms. To ignore it is to remain a servant to appearances. To embrace it is to awaken to your own divinity. In the same way, persistence in the state of the wish fulfilled becomes your most powerful tool. The world may resist, circumstances may seem stubborn, people may act unpredictably, but none of this matters. Your task is not to move the outer, but to remain faithfully in the inner, to feel, to imagine, to inhabit the state you desire until it becomes natural, effortless, unshakable. This is not struggle, it is surrender to your own power. When you persist, the universe, self, begins to rearrange. Doors open that were previously closed, opportunities appear where none existed. Events orchestrate themselves with mathematical precision, all because you have assumed the feeling of the fulfilled desire as the reality of your present experience. This is not magic, this is law. And so, you learn the art of ignoring the senses, not through denial or force, but through deliberate inner action. The senses will whisper fear, doubt, delay. They will attempt to drag you back into old assumptions, into the habitual belief that reality is fixed, finite, and resistant. But you rise above them. You trust imagination over sight, feeling over evidence, assumption over circumstance. The more you do this, the more effortless it becomes. You are no longer ruled by what is visible. You are guided by what is true in the unseen. In this way, every challenge becomes an opportunity to strengthen your inner conviction, every obstacle a chance to practice the mastery of living from the end. To embody this fully is to understand another subtle yet powerful truth. Life does not test you. Life does not withhold. Life simply reflects. Every seeming resistance, every apparent denial, every temporary delay is nothing but a mirror of past assumptions that have not yet been replaced. When you persist in your chosen assumption, the mirror must change. It has no choice. Your inner reality is the script, and the outer world is the stage that faithfully enacts it. This is why focusing on the unseen, on the feeling of fulfillment, on the state you wish to inhabit, is the single most effective method of creation. You are not forcing, you are simply aligning with what already exists in consciousness. As this understanding deepens, you will notice a profound sense of calm and authority arising within. The anxious striving, the restless seeking, the constant measuring of ends, all of it fades. You no longer wait for the world to act, for circumstances to confirm, for people to respond. Instead, you live as if your desire is already true. You act, speak, and feel from that state. And in so doing, the world conforms effortlessly. There is no struggle, no effort, no negotiation. The law has been set into motion, and its outcome is guaranteed, not because of chance, but because your assumption is unchanging, persistent, and real in consciousness. Then comes the deeper awareness. The unseen is infinitely abundant, infinitely responsive, infinitely intelligent. When you align with it through your assumption, you tap into a limitless source of creativity and power. You no longer create from scarcity or limitation. You create from abundance, from completeness, from certainty. Every desire, every goal, every aspiration is already present in this infinite field. Your imagination is the means by which you access it. Your feeling is the key that unlocks it. And your persistence is the force that brings it into tangible expression. To doubt this is to ignore the law. To believe it is to awaken fully to your creative sovereignty. Finally, you come to understand that this method, this practice, this mastery of feeling and assumption is not temporary, not conditional, not partial. It is a permanent shift in consciousness. Once you learn to live from the end, to inhabit the state of fulfillment before it manifests, you are forever transformed. You will never again be dependent on the outer world to define your reality. You will never again wait for signs or proofs. You will live in the certainty of the unseen, and the world, as always, must obey.
This is the essence of the fifth and sixth lesson.
The unseen is supreme, and the feeling of the fulfilled desire is the vehicle of creation. The outer world is obedient, time is malleable, and everything is guided by your assumption. To remember this, to apply it faithfully, to inhabit it without hesitation, is to step into your true power, to awaken to the mastery of life itself, and to know with unshakable certainty that all you desire is already yours in consciousness and will manifest as naturally as day follows night. To step into the mastery of living from the end is to recognize that the senses are not your authority, and that the evidence of the outer world is never the measure of your reality. The senses are deceivers, whispering of limitation, delay, and lack, while the unseen offers abundance, immediacy, and certainty. Every time you feel the tug of the senses, the pull of doubt, you are presented with an opportunity, a chance to choose the inner state that aligns with your desire. You are challenged not to control the world, but to govern yourself. You are asked not to chase fulfillment, but to embody it, to dwell in the end, to act, speak, and feel as the person who has already received, is to exercise the supreme authority over your own life. This is not a theory. It is the living law of consciousness made practical, immediate, and inevitable. To ignore it is to struggle. To embrace it is to triumph effortlessly. In this practice, imagination becomes more than a pastime. It becomes the very workshop of your life. You enter it with complete faith and feel your wishes as if they are already accomplished. You imagine scenes in which your desire is fulfilled, not as a distant hope, but as a present reality, living and breathing within you. The power of this practice lies not in action taken in the outer world, but in the completeness of feeling you inhabit while imagining. When you act from this inner reality, you are no longer a victim of circumstance. You are a creator, a sovereign being whose consciousness dictates the unfolding of all events, every SC. You imagine, Every feeling you accept as true sets the outer world in motion. The unseen begins to materialize, aligning people, events, and opportunities to the reality you already inhabit internally. Then comes the subtle yet transformative understanding that life is entirely responsive to the state you occupy. Nothing outside you creates your experience. Everything outside is a reflection of your inner world. When you live from the end, you no longer react to appearances. You no longer measure your worth, your progress, or your potential by the changing circumstances around you. Instead, you act with quiet certainty, confident that the unseen is already in motion, orchestrating all conditions to match your assumption. This detachment from appearances does not mean indifference. It means mastery. It means that you are no longer swayed by the whims of the outer world, because you know with absolute clarity that your inner state governs all. The outer must obey, for it has no independent power. It is the mirror of your consciousness. As you persist in this state, a profound shift occurs within. Doubt, anxiety, and the old patterns of seeking begin to dissolve. The old self, defined by lack, limitation, and uncertainty, gradually fades as the new self, fully aligned with the end, takes its place. You begin to move through life with a quiet power, unshakable and serene, because you are no longer dependent on external evidence. You trust entirely in the creative law that governs the unseen. You no longer ask, will it happen? Because the answer is already embedded in the state you occupy. The manifestation is not something to be pursued, it is something that is already complete in consciousness. Your task is simply to dwell in it, to feel it, to live as the person who already possesses it, and the outer world will inevitably reflect your inner reality. Inhabit this state consistently, and you will find that the outer world rearranges itself with astonishing precision. People will act in accordance with your inner assumptions, opportunities will appear as if by magic, and circumstances will align effortlessly. This is not coincidence. It is the inevitable result of the law of assumption operating without obstruction. Every thought, every feeling, every moment you spend in the fulfillment of your desire strengthens this law. The unseen, infinite and responsive, cannot resist the force of a consciousness fully aligned with the end. You are no longer waiting for life to give you your desire. Life is moving in perfect harmony with the identity you have chosen to assume. To fully master this, you must also learn the art of ignoring the contradicting evidence of the senses without conflict or struggle. When the senses whisper, you do not engage in debate or attempt to rationalize, you simply remain in your chosen state. You feel the reality of your wish fulfilled with unwavering conviction, allowing the outer circumstances to adjust themselves in response. This is the essence of faith in action, not passive hope, but active assumption. It is the deliberate choice to live from the end in every moment, to allow the unseen to manifest without interference, and to embody the state that is the source of all creation. When you do this, you become the master of your own reality, impervious to doubt and fully aligned with the infinite possibilities that already exist in consciousness. And so these lessons, these key understandings, are not merely intellectual exercises. They are the blueprint for complete transformation. To live from the end, to feel your wish fulfilled, to persist in the state of assumption, and to ignore the deceptive evidence of the senses is to step into a life where struggle is obsolete, where manifestation is inevitable, and where you are the sovereign creator of your own experience. Every action you take, every word you speak, every feeling you entertain is imbued with the power to shape the outer world, not because you manipulate it, but because you govern the inner with absolute authority. This is the mastery of life itself, the ultimate understanding of the law of assumption, and the path to living in a reality of infinite possibilities where nothing can resist the state you embody. To reach the pinnacle of mastery in living from the end, one must recognize that the final keys lie not in effort, not in struggle, not in negotiation with appearances, but in total and unwavering assumption. The 9th and 10th keys reveal the profound truth that your inner state is the ultimate determinant of your reality, and that the senses, The evidence of the outer world are always subordinate to the law of consciousness. When you understand this fully, you see that everything you have previously considered limitations, obstacles, or delays are but shadows cast by your own unexamined assumptions. They have no independent power, no authority over you, except that which you unknowingly grant them. The first step, therefore, is the absolute recognition that the unseen is the only realm of true power. It is here, within the invisible, that all creation originates, and it is here that you must dwell consistently, deliberately, and with complete faith. To live from the end is to inhabit this space as your natural home, to feel the reality of your desire as all, ready accomplished, and to allow the outer world to conform to this inner truth. This is not imagination in the sense of idle fantasy. It is imagination employed as a sacred and deliberate tool of creation, a tool that molds every aspect of your outer experience in accordance with the identity you assume. The ninth key emphasizes the necessity of unwavering persistence in this state. To assume the end once is insufficient. To dwell there sporadically is to invite the old patterns to reclaim dominion over your consciousness. Life requires constancy. The state you occupy moment to moment determines the entire course of events that will appear. Every fleeting doubt, every moment of yielding to the senses is a crack in the foundation that may delay the manifestation, yet the law itself remains unbroken. Persistence is not brute force. It is the patient, calm, and deliberate continuation of the assumption. You do not attempt to bend the world to your will. You allow the world to bend itself in response to the unshakable reality you maintain within. Every time you return to the feeling of your wish fulfilled, every time you immerse yourself in the inner reality where your desire is already accomplished, you reinforce the blueprint for the outer world to follow. This is why persistence is the silent power behind all manifestations. It is not about struggling to see results. It is about remaining true to the inner state, letting the unseen do the work without interference. The 10th key expands upon this by revealing the subtle yet transformative principle of total inner independence. You are not at the mercy of circumstances, people, or timing. These outer phenomena are reflections of your inner assumptions, and when you fully grasp this, you are liberated from the tyranny of appearances. The outer world is simply a canvas, and your consciousness is the brush. When you choose a new identity, a new state, and dwell in it with feeling, the outer world reorganizes to match it. This requires a shift from reaction to creation. No longer do you respond to events or allow them to dictate your mood or your belief. You act, speak, and feel from the end. And the world must follow, because the world has no independent force. It is governed entirely by consciousness. In this sense, mastery is not control. It is alignment. It is knowing that when you fully inhabit the end, nothing can resist the inner truth you carry. The law is absolute, and the manifestation is inevitable when the assumption is complete and unwavering. To integrate these keys into your life, you must also embrace the art of psychological rehearsal. Each day, every night, you mentally live as the person who has already achieved the desire. You see through their eyes, feel through their heart, and move with their poise. You speak the words, inhabit the actions, and immerse yourself in the emotional truth of the fulfilled state. This is not pretending. It is the active realization of your own inner power. When you practice in this way, you condition your entire being to the state of fulfillment. Doubts fade, anxieties dissolve, and the outer world begins to reflect the harmony you cultivate within. Each mental rehearsal, each immersion in the end, strengthens the inner reality and accelerates the physical manifestation. The unseen is responsive to feeling. It requires no convincing, no rational argument, no external evidence. It responds to the state you occupy as though it is the only reality. This is the miracle of living from the end, the certainty that what is assumed is already complete. Furthermore, these keys teach you the necessity of detachment from time. Time is a construct, a measurement of change that only exists for the senses. In the unseen, all things are complete, fully formed, and eternal. When you dwell in the end, you release the need for evidence within the chronological framework of the world. You feel, you assume, and you allow without measuring, doubting, or worrying about when or how the manifestation will appear. This is the supreme exercise of faith, knowing that the work is already done and that the unfolding of events is merely the reflection of an inner reality already established. By ignoring temporal concerns, you free the mind from anxiety and you allow the law of assumption to operate without obstruction. The unseen is not constrained by the ticking of a clock. It is instantaneous, eternal, and responsive. Your task is simply to dwell in the state, to live it, to embody it fully, and the outer will follow naturally. Another critical aspect revealed in these keys is the deep understanding of emotional fidelity. To live from the end requires more than intellectual acknowledgement. It requires feeling. Feeling is the currency of creation. Thought without feeling is inert. Feeling without thought is unfocused. Together, when aligned with the state of the wish fulfilled, thought and feeling become a potent creative force. Each emotion you entertain strengthens the identity you assume and reinforces the blueprint for manifestation. When you feel as if the desire is already accomplished, you signal to the unseen that the creation is complete, and the outer must obey. Mastery comes not from reasoning, not from argument. Not from planning, but from the consistent, deliberate cultivation of the inner state, enriched with emotion, sustained with clarity, and shielded from contradiction by the senses. This is the ultimate discipline, the pinnacle of conscious creation. In living fully by these principles, you will notice the profound transformation of self. Old fears, limiting beliefs, and unconscious habits dissolve. You no longer measure yourself by lack or circumstance. You measure yourself by the completeness of your inner state. Every action you take becomes an expression of the identity you have assumed. Your world adjusts accordingly. Relationships, finances, opportunities, and experiences begin to mirror the new consciousness you inhabit. There is a harmony, a synchronicity, a flow that was previously absent. Because now your inner authority dictates the rhythm of outer events. The unseen conspires with the persistent, faithful, and feeling-aligned consciousness, bringing forth the manifestation in ways that may appear miraculous, but are perfectly natural within the law. The final realization embedded in these keys is the absolute freedom that comes from understanding your creative power. When you truly believe in the unseen, when you persist in the state of the end, when you act and feel as the fulfilled person, you become immune to doubt, resistant to delay, and untouched by fear. Nothing outside can sway the inner certainty that you cultivate. You are no longer reacting, you are creating. You are no longer waiting, you are allowing. You are no longer uncertain, you are resolved. This freedom is not given by circumstance. It is claimed from within, and it is absolute. When you embody it fully, you will never again live as the person who sought. You will live as the person who has already received. This is the ultimate mastery, the end point of the journey in the living application of the law of assumption in its purest, most potent form.